Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadhyasya yatonvayaditaratascha artheshu abhigyaswarat Tene brahmahridaya adikavaye muhyanti yatsuraya Tejo vari mridam yatha vinimayo yatra sargom risha Dhamna svena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi Nigamakalpataror galitam phalam shukamukad amrita drava sanyutam Pibata Bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. We now enter the 16th chapter of the 8th Skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we saw how Bali regained all his power by serving his guru, and he laid siege on the heavenly kingdom of Indra, and Indra and all the Devatas had to flee. So now we continue, Shuka Brahma Rishi continues, he says, after all the Devatas fled, their mother Aditi was very worried. So, as we remember, the sage Kashyapa is the father of both the Devatas and the Daityas, that is, the demigods and the demons. We've seen this before, that Kashyapa had two wives, Aditi and Diti. Aditi, whose children are called Adityas and the Devas. Diti, whose children are called Daityas, are the demons. And also the symbolism behind it, being Aditi means one without any conflict. Diti means one who is caught in the conflict of duality, and therefore Diti's sons are the demons and Aditi's sons are the Devatas. So it is said that because all her sons, that is all the demigods, had to disappear, they had to vanish from their own abode. Their mother, who is Aditi, was very worried and very distressed. So when she was in this way, Kashyapa, her husband, came to her. He had been in samadhi for a long time, in deep meditation, and he woke up from samadhi. And coming out of samadhi, he saw her sitting without any cheer, without any joy. It says, Nir Utsavam, Nir Anandam, Samadher Virataschirat. So when he came out of samadhi, he saw his wife Aditi without any cheerfulness or any joy. So, seeing his wife this way, he was offered a seat by her anyway. So, he had just gotten out of meditation. So, she still offered him a nice seat and she gave him water and whatever he could need. But he could see that she was looking very sorrowful, very sad. So, he spoke to her and said, I hope no harm has come to you for which is causing you this kind of sadness. And he lists a bunch of things which could possibly cause harm, which are all very instructive. He says, first of all, I hope no harm has come to the sagely people in this world, nor to the cause of righteousness, nor to people in general. So he says to her that if there is any sadness caused to sagely people, Vipranam, so he says, Api abhadram na Vipranam, Bhadre loke adhunagatam na dharmasya na lokasya mrityos chandanu vartinaha. So he says, is there any source of sadness or inauspiciousness to the wise sages, Vipras? Is there any harm done to dharma, righteousness itself? And is there any harm being done to people in general? So he has just got out of samadhi. As we saw, he has been in samadhi for a very long time. So he is not aware of what has happened in the world. And therefore, he is first asking, we can see the concern of the sage. He is not asking about the family or about his children. He is first asking about the state of the world in terms of the state of the sagely people, Vipras, and Dharma itself, and the people at large. Then he says, is there any hindrance for the regular folks who are pursuing Dharma, Artha, Kama, which they can simply pursue without any desire for reward and thereby take to yoga? So he again says how householders who are engaged in family activities, They have been given the way of engaging in dharma, artha, and kama, that is, in righteousness, in wealth generation, as well as in sensual comforts. But if they are engaged in it in a regulated way, without any desire for the results, then that itself becomes yoga for them without engaging in any other formal yoga. So he says, is this course of yoga available for householders in any jeopardy? And then he says, or did strangers came to your door and you did not honor them because you were caught in the duties of your family? So these are also instructive. What he is asking about is first about dharma and about the sages. Then he is asking about the general householders. Then he is asking about strangers who may come to the door. He says, Apiva atitayo abhetya kutumbasakya tvaya grihad apujita ayata pratyuthanena vakwachit. He says, did you get so attached to your family duties that you forgot to honor a stranger who has come to the door and he had to return empty handed? So, this is the sign of dharma. So, in all these questions, Kashyapa is instructing us on how one has to live and what is the source of unhappiness. If one does not honor the guests, the strangers who come home at any time, they don't have to call, they don't have to make an appointment, they can come anytime. And if they come, we have to honor them, give them whatever we can offer. And if we don't, then he says that can result in sadness. If householders are not able to live in dharma, that can live in sadness. If sages are not happy, that can result in sadness. And if sacred fires are not meant offered the right oblations, that can result in sadness, because he says the taking care of the sagely people as well as the sacred fire is how one can satisfy the very mouth of Bhagavan himself. He says, Brahmano Agnischa Vai Vishnoho Sarva Devatatmano Mukham. Vishnu, who is the soul of all devatas, Sarva Devatatmano Mukham, his mouth is literally the mouth of all the sages as well as the sacred fire. So, if one feeds the sacred fire through yajna, and more importantly, if one feeds the mouths of the sagely people, then it is as good as feeding the mouth of God. So, he says, therefore, if there was any harm done in terms of not feeding properly the sages, not offering the oblations to the sacred fire, and of course, not treating strangers correctly, or not having the right dharma for householders, did any of this happen? And then finally, he is asking, are all the sons faring well? So, this shows the priority of the sage. The sage is asking that as the very last question: are all the sons doing well? Your sons who are the Adityas. So he first asked about dharma, about the sages, about the householders, about people at large, about strangers who come to the house, and about offering oblations to the sacred fire. Have all these been done correctly? If any of that was missing, then I can understand that you are sad because of that. And if your sons are not doing well, I can also understand that you're not doing well. So that's how Bhagavatam instructs in every discourse on the right way of dealing with situation, right priority of life, and the right sense of dharma. So Aditi replies to this question. She says, no, everything is fine in those regards. All the sages are doing well. All the cows and all the dharma aspects of dharma are all prospering. The field for the three objects of human pursuit, dharma, artha, and kama, are all going on smoothly. The sacred fires are maintained correctly. Strangers are fed correctly. Servants, beggars are all also properly fed. There is nothing lacking in any of these because I am always devoted to you and I know what is the right way. She says, Agniyor atithayo bhritya bhikshavo echa lipsavaha sarvam bhagavato brahman anudhyanan na rishyati. She says, because I'm always meditating upon you, devoted to you, my husband, who is such a great sage. I know what is the right course of action, and therefore, all of these, the sacred fires, the strangers, the beggars, the servants, everyone is fed well, taken care well, and there is no desire in my mind as well, because you are there as my teacher, and therefore I have no unfulfilled desire. You know that all of these beings are simply created out of your own self. So she is now referring to both the Devatas and the Daityas, that is the demigods and the demons. She says, all of them are created from you because he is the father of the Devatas through Aditi and the demons through her sister Diti. So she says, everyone has come from you, and I know you are impartial to all of them. And yet, even the Lord is particularly attached to those who are devoted to Him. Therefore, you also please consider what I am saying, that our wealth has been usurped unfairly by the demons. So, she first addresses all his concerns by saying everything about dharma and all the aspects of right living are all fine, but the only problem is her sons are stolen out of their wealth. They have been made to run from their own home. And she also says, you are impartial because you are alike to everyone, especially because both are his sons. But at the same time, just as the Lord, who is common to all, and yet who showers his grace on his devotees, similarly, you are to also consider this, that even though they are all same to you, the Devatas have been unfairly stolen, their wealth has been usurped by the demons. And therefore, because of this, I am plunged in an ocean of misery. So you have to tell me some means by which we can help the sons, the Devas. So, listening to this, Kashyapa smiles and he says, wonderful indeed is the might of the Maya of Vishnu. That's the first thing he says, because it binds people by ties of affection. So he looks at his wife, Aditi, and he sees how attached she is to her sons, that she is so sad. So Kashyapa, being a sage, his first concern was dharma and yoga and strangers being fed and righteousness being maintained and sages being taken care and so on. His last concern was about his sons, whereas she is so sad despite everything being fine, just because her sons are in a bad position. She is so depressed, so down, so melancholy. So he says, Aho Maya Balam Vishnoho Snehabaddham Idam Jagat. So this whole world is tied by the bond of affection, which is the power of the Maya of Vishnu, because he says, what is the body and what is the spirit and how different they are, and yet people take them to be same. And he says further, who is whose husband, who is whose son, and yet ignorance being the root of attachment, everybody is so attached to their relations. He says, Kwa deho bhautiko na atma, kwacha atma prakrite paraha, kasyake patir putradya moha eva hi karanam. So he says, the body which is made of the elements, what is that? And the pure spirit which is beyond nature, what is that? Which is to say, they are both entirely different. The body, which is matter, which is made of five elements, is what is the nature of relations and so on. The pure spirit, which is beyond the matter, is unchanging and is the same, and there is no sense of relation, bondage, and anything to that. And therefore, who is whose husband, who is whose son, all these relationships are only for the body, not for this pure spirit. And yet people are identified with the body so much. He's looking at his wife and saying, and therefore that is why there is so much ignorance and so much attachment. In any case, he says, so your only recourse is to worship the Lord, the Supreme Being Vasudeva, because he dwells in the hearts of all people, and therefore you can worship him. He says, Uttishthasva Purusham Bhagavantam Janardhanam Sarvabhuta Guhavasam Vasudevam Jagadgurum. Vasudeva, who is the Guru of the whole universe, who resides in the cave of the heart of all beings, Sarvabhuta Guhavasam, Janardanam, he is Janardana, the one who takes care of all the people. Janardana is another beautiful name of the Supreme Lord. Bhagavantam, Bhagavan, pray unto him. And he says this, the Lord Sri Hari, who is always compassionate towards the miserable, will take care of your worries, because devotion to the Lord alone is the only unfailing recourse in all matters, nothing else. He says, Savidhasyati te kaman harir dinanukampanaha amogha bhagavad bhaktir itareti matir mama. He says, other than bhakti to Bhagavan, devotion to Bhagavan, there is no other way, because he is the one who is always compassionate towards the miserable, Sri Hari. So when he says this, Aditi then asks, please tell me what is the way to worship him now that I am in a particular situation where all the sons are completely in misery. They have all been made to run away from their homes incognito, that is, they have changed their form, they are hiding away, and they have no home. They are all completely homeless and running around. So, when this is the situation, please tell me what is the way to worship the Lord? How can I attain my object of making sure that the suffering of my sons are relieved? So he says, okay, I will tell you. Kashyapa says, I'll tell you the sacred vow called Payovrata. So this is the beautiful teaching of this chapter, a beautiful sacred vow called Payovrata. He says, I'll teach you this Payovrata. You can observe this Payovrata to please the Lord Keshava, and thereby your suffering will be relieved. Keshava is again another name for Krishna or Vasudeva, beautiful name of Bhagwan. So he says, I learned this Payovrata from Brahma, and I am now teaching this to you. So what you have to do is, first of all, with great devotion, living only on milk, you have to worship the Supreme Lord for 12 days during the bright fortnight of Phalguna. So Phalguna is the month in spring, which comes roughly in March every year. And in that month, he says, in the bright fortnight, that is after the new moon day, when when the moon is waxing, in the bright fortnight, Shukla Paksha, for 12 days, you have to live only on milk. That's why it's called Payovrata, because Payo means milk. To vow to live only on milk is called Payovrata. So he says, Phalgunasya amale pakshe dwadashaham Payovratah archayed arvindaksham bhaktya parama anvitaha. So he says, Arvindaksham, the lotus-eyed Lord, you have to worship him for 12 days, Dwadasha Aham, in the Amala Paksha, in the bright fortnight of Phalguna month, living only on milk. And the way to do it, now he describes in detail. So, first day, that is the new moon day, you have to go to some stream and stand in the stream and first offer your worship to the Mother Earth by saying, you were lifted up from the bottom of the deluge of water by the Lord in the original form of Varaha, and now I have sought your support for this prayer. Please wipe out all my suffering. So the prayer is first, Tvam Devya Adivarahena Rasaya Sthanamichhata Udhrittasi Namastubhyam Papmanam Me Pranashya. This prayer says, O Mother Earth, you were saved by Adi Varaha in the beginning. We saw that episode, in fact, where Hiranyaksha took earth into the deluge, and Varaha, the boar form of the Lord, entered the deluge and brought back earth and killed Hiranyaksha as well. So that it's referred to that episode and says, you are saved by the Varaha avatar, and now I surrender to you first to make sure this prayer goes well. Then after coming out of the stream, you have to install an image of the Lord. You can have either an physical image, or you can simply have a sacred fire, or you can even have the form of your guru. whichever way, and then he gives the prayer, the beautiful prayer of Payovrata. There is a set of prayers. Every single verse is very beautiful. He says, first you have to say, Namastubhyam Bhagavate Purushaya Mahiyase Sarvabhuta Nivasaya Vasudevaya Sakshine. So after installing this image of the Lord, from the first day for the 12 days, you have to chant this prayer. The first prayer is, O Lord, the Supreme Being who resides in the hearts of all living entities, the greatest of the great, the witness in the hearts of all, O Vasudeva, I offer my obeisances. Namastubhyam Bhagavate Purushaya Mahiyase Sarvabhuta Nivasaya Vasudevaya Sakshine. Then it says, O Lord, you are the unmanifest and the most subtle, and you are also the knower of matter, which has 24 categories, and you also brought forth the philosophy of Sankhya, which lists all the 24 categories. So we saw this in the Kapila avatar in 3rd Skandha, where Kapila instructed his mother Devahuti on Sankhya, which is the discernment between matter and spirit, and matter being made of 24 components, which are the 5 elements, the 5 subtle elements, the 5 senses of perception, the 5 senses of action, mind, intellect, memory, and ego. So this is the 24. So, and Sankhya was given by Kapila. So this prayer says, Namo Avyaktaya Sukshmaya Pradhana Purushaya Cha Chaturvimshat Gunajnaya Gunasankhyana Hetave. So the one who is beyond both matter and spirit, and who knows matter, which is made of 24 categories, and the one who came and described those 24 as Sankhya. Then the next prayer is, Hail to you, the deity who presides all sacrifices, with 2 heads, with 3 feet, with 4 horns, with 7 arms. It's very mystical. So the 2 heads are supposed to be the 2 types of sacrifices which are done at the beginning and end, called Prayaniya and Udayaniya. The 3 feet are supposed to be the 3 times of the day: morning, midday, and evening. That is dawn, midday, and dusk. The 4 horns are supposed to be the 4 Vedas: Rig, Sama, Yajur, and Atharva. And the 7 arms are supposed to be the 7 Vedic meters, which are Gayatri, Tristub, Anushtub, Brihati, Pankti, Jagati, and Ushnik. So the prayer is Namo Dvishirshne Tripade Chatushringaya Tantave Saptahastaya Yajnaya Trayi Vidyatmane Namaha. Dvishirshne means 2-headed, that is the 2 types of yajna. Tripade means 3 feet, the 3 times, dawn, midday, and dusk. Chatushringaya, 4 horns, the 4 Vedas. Saptahastaya, 7 arms, the 7 Vedic meters. Yajnaya Trayi Vidyatmane Namaha, the sacrifice which is described in the 3 Vedas, Rig, Yajur, and Sama. Then, very beautifully, the prayer also addresses Shiva by saying Namah Shivaya Rudraya Namah Shakti Dharaya Cha Sarva Vidyadi Pataye Bhutanam Pataye Namaha. Hail to Lord Shiva, who is Rudra, who is the wielder of all potencies, who is the ruler of all entities, and who is the master of all sciences, Sarva Vidyadi Pataye. So Namah Shivaya Rudraya Namah Shakti Dharaya Cha Sarva Vidyadi Pataye Bhutanam Pataye Namaha. Then the prayer also addresses Brahma, Namo Hiranyagarbhaya Pranaya Jagadatmane. O Hiranyagarbha, who is Brahma, I offer my obeisance to you, and I offer my obeisance to the soul of the universe, the Supreme Being. Then it says, Yogeshwarya Shariraya Namaste Yoga Hetave. You are the embodiment of yoga itself, and you are the very source of yoga. Then the prayer says, I hail to you, standing as a witness of all living entities, Sri Hari, who appeared as the sage Narayana and Nara. So we saw this dual sage manifestation who are in Badrinath, called Narayana and Nara, or Nara Narayana. So they are also offered obeisances. It says Namasta Adi Devaya Sakshi Bhutaya Te Namaha, Narayanaya Rishaye, Naraya Haraye Namaha. So offering obeisances to Nara Narayana, the divine sages. Then offering the obeisances to the Lord in his form, it says, you with a form that is dark green like the emerald, and who has Sri as the spouse, that is Lakshmi, O Lord Keshava, who is clad in yellow silk, I offer my obeisances. Namo Marakata Shyama Vapu She Adigata Shriye Keshavaya Namastubhyam Namaste Pitavasase. So it says Marakata Shyama Vapushe means the one who has got the form that is like the dark green emerald, and then who's got Sri, the mother Lakshmi in his heart, Keshava, the Lord, Namastubhyam with yellow silk Pitavasase. You are the bestower of all the boons, you are sought after by all, and it is therefore that the wise adore the lotus feet of your glory. So it says, Tvam Sarva Varada Pumsam Varenya Varadarshabha Ataste Shreyase Dhira Pada Renum Upasate. So the wise adore the lotus feet, the dust of your lotus feet, because you are the bestower of all boons. Therefore, may you be gracious unto me, whom all the devatas and Mother Lakshmi herself serve by seeking your lotus feet. Anvavartanta yam deva shrischa tat pada padmayoho sprihayanta ivam modam bhagavan me prasidatam. So this is how the prayer concludes. These are the prayers, and all these prayers are very beautiful. First, adoring Lord Vasudeva, who is in the hearts of all beings, the nature of sacrifice itself, the one who is unmanifest and who is the knower of matter and spirit, the nature of sacrifice, and then Lord in the form of Lord Shiva and Brahma, and then in the form of the sages Nara Narayana, and the Supreme Being in his original form as Keshava with dark emerald form, giver of all boons. May you be pleased with me and offer your grace to me. So this is the essence of this prayer. So Kashyapa now teaches that you have to be with great reverence and take this prayer and worship the Lord in the image by offering him water and other articles of worship with great Shraddha. Etair mantrair Hrishikesham Avahanam Puraskritam Archayet Shraddhaya Yuktah Padya Upasparshanadibihi. So you have to, Avahana means to invoke the Lord in this image, and then by invoking him and then saying this prayer with great Shraddha, with great reverence and sincerity, and offering all articles of worship, decorating the image with sandal paste and flowers and so on, offering milk, giving a beautiful cloth, beautiful sacred thread ornaments, water. By doing all this, then you should recite the 12 syllable mantra, which is the mantra that Narada also gave to Dhruva, the mantra we chant every day, in fact, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is called the 12 syllable mantra, Dwadasha Akshara mantra. And then he says, after chanting this 12 syllable Dwadasha Akshara mantra, then you have to make rice boiled in milk. It's called payasa. Payasa is rice made in milk with some sweet like jaggery. And then it has to be offered to the Lord. And then after that, it has to be offered to anyone who is present there. And then a little bit has to be taken at last for oneself. So this is the way. First offer it to the Lord as Naivedyam. He says, Shrutam Payasi Naivedyam Shalyannam Vibhave Sati. So if one is capable of doing this, one has to make a nice preparation of milk with bit of sugar or jaggery, and make what's called payasa, and then offer it as naivedyam, and then it has to be offered to anyone present there, and then finally one can consume a little bit of that, and after that one has to offer water and betel leaves and so on, and then one has to chant the same Dwadashakshara mantra, that is the 12 lettered mantra which we just said, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This mantra has to be chanted 108 times, and then one has to circumambulate clockwise the image of the Lord, and then fall prostrate on the ground, and then after that one has to allow the deity to retire. So that is, after this puja, this worship is over, one has to close the deity. So this is the way of allowing the deity to retire, is to close the deity, close the with a curtain or some other way. And after that one has to feed anyone who is there properly, while oneself has to only have milk, as it is said. So this way one has to start on the new moon day and do the same every day. That is the 12 days starting from new moon day through the bright fortnight. This is the routine. Take a bath and then have this image of the Lord, invoke the Lord through the mantra that was chanted, the whole prayer of Payovrata, starting with the invocation of Vasudeva. Namastubhyam Bhagavate Purushaya Mahiyase Sarvabhuta Nivasaya Vasudevaya Sakshine, all the way, those mantras to invoke the Lord, and then offer articles of worship, offer this pious, the sweet preparation with rice and milk, and then offer it to the people assembled there, and then chant 108 times the Dwadashakshara mantra Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, circumambulate and offer prostrations, and then close the darshan, and after that offer food to those who are assembled there, and live only on milk, and live with great discipline, which is to say, live purely celibate and living strictly on a milk diet for 12 days, adoring the Supreme Lord. So he says, Evam Twaharaha Kuryad Dwadashaham Payovrataha Harer Aradhanam Homam Arhanam Dvijatarpanam. So one has to adore the Supreme Lord and feed the Brahmanas, feed the sages, feed the holy people. And Homa Marhana means to also worship the sacred fire and live only on milk for 12 days. By doing so, from the first day till the 13th day, that is 12 days, and at the end of it, one has to close this vrata. He says, and through this all, what's very important is one has to live in a very simple way, bathing 3 times, that is morning, midday, and evening, sleeping on the ground, living in continence, as we saw, that is to have brahmacharya or celibacy, and then most importantly, not engage in any unnecessary talk. So being harmless to all living beings, devoted to Lord Vasudeva, avoid talking any unnecessary unholy topics, or engaging in any luxury. So this is very important. It can be done all the time, but especially in these 12 days, he says, do not engage in any worldly topics, engaging about politics or news or gossip or anything like that. Simply remain silent or engage in glorifying the Lord. So he says, Varjayet asadalapam boganuchan vachanstata ahimsrak sarvabhutanam vasudeva parayana. So simply adore Vasudeva and do not engage in unnecessary topics. And then on the 13th day, after the 12 days are over, he says the Lord's image can be worshipped with 5 substances, which are milk, curd, butter, honey, and sugar. And then very generously one has to perform a worship of the Lord on the 13th day with a fully concentrated mind, again with the milk preparation and also with an excellent food. Now after the 12 days of only milk based diet is over, on the 13th day a very opulent feast based on one's capability, one's ability, whatever one can afford. Based on that, one should make excellent preparation food, Mahaprasad, with great appetizing flavor and very pure ingredients. And then one should feed the offering this great prasad, Mahaprasad. One should feed all the learned beings and the teachers and whoever is there very generously, so that they are all very happy, because he says their very satisfaction is the satisfaction of Sri Hari himself. So by feeding everyone very generously and happily and giving them gifts on the 13th day, and this way one can finish this Payovrata sacrifice. And by offering gifts and feasts to the acharyas, to the gurus, and feeding all the people. In fact, very specifically, Kashyapa mentions that one has to offer the prasad to people of all kinds. It doesn't matter whether they are pious or not. He says very specifically, even those who cook the flesh of dogs. So those who are, they are called chandalas, class of people who they are known to eat meat of dog, which is looked down upon in almost all cultures. And so he says even those should be offered prasad. So everyone should be offered prasad without any discrimination. And after having served prasad to everyone, one has to take for oneself the prasad with his own family and friends. He says, Bhuktavatsu cha sarveshu dina anda kripaneshu cha Vishnostat prinanam vidwan bunjita saha bandhubihi. So after feeding everyone, whoever it is, destitute, poor, beggars if they are there, or people who can't afford, and anyone without any discrimination, finally one has to take this food with his relatives. And if it is done this way, and along with that, one has to engage in those 12 days in the evenings and so on, whatever time, with music and dance, which are all for glorifying the Lord. So the nature of the mind is to always engage in activities looking for entertainment, but that very impulse can be dovetailed towards the Lord by listening to the music that is glorifying Lord, or singing and dancing in kirtans and so on. So he says you can engage in music, nritya vaditra gitaischa stutibihi. So stuti means to glorify the Lord. You can do nritya or gita, that is dance or sing, all in the mood of glorifying the Lord, and then also narrate stories about him. He says, Karaye tat kathabhischa pujam bhagavato anvaham. So this is all a way to engage all the senses so that there is no deprivation, but at the same time there is no engagement in anything unnecessary or which is distracting, but engaging the propensity to sing, dance, discuss stories, all of this to talk about Bhagavan, to sing about Bhagavan. This way, if you live for 12 days and 13th day, you finish this, then this is called as Payovrata. He says, Etat Payovratam Nama Purusharadhanam Param. He says, this is the greatest vow, Payovrata, and this was taught to me by my grandfather, that is Brahma. So, as we can remember, Kashyapa is the son of Marichi, and Marichi is the son of Brahma. Therefore, he is literally the grandson of Brahma. So, he says, fully controlling your mind, you have to adore the Supreme Lord Keshava with a pure intellect and with total devotion, and observe this vow. Tvamcha anena mahabhage samyak chirnena keshavam atmana shuddhabhavena niyatatma bhajavyayam. So you have to adore the Lord, who is the unchanging, immutable, eternal Lord, Keshava, with a pure heart in this way. And this is called as the most universal sacrifice. He says, I am by sarva yajnakyaha sarva vrithamitahi smritam. This is the essence of all sacrifices, all vows. It is the quintessence of all austerities. He says, tapas saramidam bhadre danam cha Aishwarata Arpanam. So, of all austerities, of all gifts, all of that is contained in this. So, we can see how this particular sacrifice, this particular vrata is so holistic, it contains everything. So, just to recap again, it starts on the new moon day of Phalguna month, which is the spring month of March. And on the new moon day, starting and for 12 days in the bright fortnight, every day having a bath in the morning, and then invoking the Lord in an image, in one's own deity, if one has a deity at home, through the mantras that he gave, which glorifies the Lord as Vasudeva, as also in the form of Shiva and Brahma and the Supreme Lord who is present in all the beings as the witness. And then, having invoked him, then make a preparation of rice with jaggery and milk, offer it to him, and then chant the 12-lettered Dwadashakshara mantra, and then have sacred fire there, offer the pious to also the sacred fire, and then after that retire the deity by putting a curtain around, and then after offering prostrations and circumambulating and then retiring the deity, then the pious can be offered to everyone assembled and a little bit can be taken, and otherwise living only on milk for 12 days, and then all the 12 days living with discipline and engaging in all these activities, as it is said, of singing and dancing and talking about stories, all of that connected to the Lord. And then on the 13th morning, offer an abhishek to the Lord's deity, and then make an excellent prasad, very opulent prasad, as much as one can afford. Offer it to everyone that one can afford. It can be 10 people or 100 people, whatever one can afford, and then take it for oneself. So this is the total essence of Payovrata, a very beautiful and very doable sacrifice that is taught by Kashyapa Muni. And so he says this can be done by you because this is the essence of all austerities. Brahma has taught him and he is teaching it to Aditi, but to all of us, and says if you do this, you are essentially purifying yourself. So the beauty of all these sacrifices is, one may say, why should one do it for 12 days and all the questions that logically one can ask? But the essence of all this is, first of all, the timing and so on are mystical that the rishis give. Why it is Phalguna month in the month of March, why it is the bright fortnight, why it is 12 days. These are all based on the mystical vision of the rishi as to what is the right time and place to do it. And beyond that, having a discipline for 12 days resets the mind completely, the body also completely, by having only a milk diet. And thereby, once antahkarana, that is inner faculties, are purified, and then it in fact becomes a way of living as well. So that's why Kashyapa teaches this wonderful religious rite, vow. And he says, to summarize everything, he says, know that the essence of all religious observances, all disciplines, all austerity, all gift is only to gratify the Supreme Lord Adhokshaja. He says, Tayeva niyama sakshat evacha yama uttamaha tapodanam vratam yajno yena tushyati adhokshaja. The essence, the reason you are doing all this is to recognize that the only truth is the Supreme Lord Adhokshaja, one who is beyond all the senses, and therefore to gratify him, to invoke him, and to honor him, and to recognize that he is the very essence of everything there is, and surrender unto him. And this is the true prayer, true austerity, true charity, true vow. Therefore, he says, concludes by saying, fully disciplined, observe this vow with reverence, your suffering will all be removed. So this is how Kashyapa Rishi gives this beautiful instruction of Payovrata to Aditi. And with this chapter ends. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.